What he's saying, it's all here. It's all here. So let's look at the gospel. The gospel is about me being in Jesus and Jesus being in me. That's ultimately what the gospel is all about. Is there any room for me if the gospel is in me? The answer is no. Right? Paul wasn't smart enough, although he was incredibly smart. He wasn't educated enough, although he was highly educated. He wasn't wealthy enough, although he came from a wealthy family. He wasn't talented enough. He wasn't anything enough to accomplish what Jesus was able to accomplish in him. And so let me explain how this works today. Because I think some of you come into this room and maybe you feel abandoned. You know what it looks like for Jesus to be in you and you in Jesus? You're not abandoned. You're loved by God. Maybe you feel condemned. He says you are forgiven and you are made pure. Maybe you've come in here and you feel like I'm just down on my luck and things are just not going the way I want them to go. They're not going how I think they should go. Man, Jesus says you are blessed with every spiritual blessing. Maybe you came in here and you feel neglected by other people, just like you've been neglected. Can I just tell you, Jesus sees you, he hears you, he loves you. Maybe you've come in and you're just defeated by temptation because everything you try, man, you just keep falling. Again and again and again, you just keep falling. Hear me. You have power over sin. Jesus is in you. And you have that power. Maybe you feel dead and you feel lifeless. If you are in Jesus, you're not dead and lifeless. You have resurrection blood running through your veins. Resurrection blood, right? Maybe you feel like you're not making a difference. Don't you know you have been raised with Jesus? Maybe you feel broken and he wants to make you complete. Maybe you feel used. And he's saying you are a new creation. The old is gone and the new has come. Maybe today you're feeling like, I don't even know who I am. I want you to hear you are adopted into God's family. You are loved beyond any measure that you could possibly imagine. You are a partaker in the kingdom. You are invited to the table and you are a beloved child of God. Because that's what it means to be crucified with Jesus. That's what it means. The gospel is not about how we begin the Christian life. The gospel is how we grow in the Christian life. Whatever our spiritual illness is, the gospel is our cure. Whatever our diagnosis is, the gospel is our prescription. That's what it is. The way we began the Christian life is how we continue the Christian life. And none of us came to the Christian life and said, here, look at Jesus, look at everything I did. We came to the Christian life because we understood that his finished work on the cross is what mattered most. So verse 21 says this, I do not nullify the grace of God. For if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. In other words, he's asking the question, how could anyone set aside the grace of God? Some of us might reject grace. Some of us might consider grace worthless. Some of us will even argue with Jesus that grace can't possibly be as true as he says it is. Some might accept it, but then we'll go on living the life, not really letting his grace make that much of a difference. Paul's saying Jesus didn't die for nothing, did he? No. So the question first, full circle here, is this: who belongs to Jesus and how do we know? Who belongs to Jesus and how do we know? I think Paul's invitation is pretty clear. There are no ifs. The only if is if you are in Jesus and Jesus is in you. That's it. And so, church filled with Christians, we have got to get rid of all the other ifs that take people back here. And I know most of us think, I don't have any, I'm good to go. I know it's just the grace of the cross. I know it's just Jesus. But if you've ever sat with somebody and said, you know what, you're a Christian if you do this, you're embracing the way that Paul was combating. Right? We're in the hot season of elections time, and we say things like this. And I get that it comes from a pure place, but we say things like, well, if you're a real Christian, you'll vote for this person or this person or this person. I'd read Galatians 2 again. Right? If you're a real Christian, then you'll make sure your kids do this, this, and this, and this, because, you can't let those kids run amok. They're going to be lawless if they do. You see what I'm saying? It's really easy. It's really easy to adapt some ifs. And the reason it's easy to adapt some ifs is because we kind of want an end result. And so we're happy to give people burdens to carry so that they might be a part of my agenda. This is what Paul's issue was, right? Paul was a Jew who had become a Christian, and since Paul has been crucified with Christ, his family traditions, his customs, his religious law didn't give him the mark of Christianity. It's now that Christ was in him, and all of his former identities are irrelevant. They are forgotten. They don't matter anymore. He's no longer defined by anything that divides. In just a couple of chapters, we're going to read when Paul says, listen, there's no longer free or slave, male or female, or Jew or Gentile. We are all one family now. And what do we want to do? We want to keep adding division. We want to keep adding the burden of the laws and the rules and the traditions, and we expect people to carry them. Paul's saying, I'm alive. But it's not because he's alive. He's saying, I'm alive because Jesus is in him, and the life he continues to live in the flesh on the earth is all for the faithfulness of Jesus, who loved him and gave himself up for him because grace is powerful. And so, how do you know if somebody belongs to Jesus? Here it is. We lose everything, including who we were before. And guess what? We accept and we learn this new life. That's what we do. This is how we know who belongs to Jesus. Because his work is now at work in us. And since Jesus gave himself up and loved us, which is the only thing that can possibly define us, we respond with faithfulness and surrender and devotion. And we fix our eyes on Jesus and we strive to honor him and live for him every single day of our lives. Tim Keller says this. He says, if you want Jesus with you, you have to give up your right to self-determination. In other words, if you want Jesus in you, you can't control your life anymore. You want Jesus in you? It's self-denial. He says this, self-denial is an act of rebellion against our late modern culture of self-assertion. Our culture says, you stand and you be loud, you work that corporate ladder, you do what it takes to be successful and influential, you don't want to ride on the back of anybody. Do whatever you have to do. And Jesus says, no. No. It's you crawling up into my arms and letting me have control of all of you. It's not that he just paid our debt, he wants our lives. All of us. He says, but that is what we are called to. Nothing less.